You know, when we think about American history, we usually think about big, important documents and major turning points. But a lot of history is actually hiding in plain sight, in laws that are so bizarre you'd swear they have to be a joke. So today, we're going to dig up some of the absolute strangest laws that are still technically on the books and see what they can tell us about a very different America. So let's just jump right in with this question. Could you actually get arrested for carrying ice cream in your pocket? It sounds like a setup to a really bad joke, right? But in some places, the answer was, yep, you absolutely could. And this isn't just a weird piece of trivia. It's a real window into a time with some very, very different problems and some pretty creative solutions. And that brings us right into our first section, History's Hilarious Laws. We're about to see that behind every rule that sounds completely ridiculous, there's almost always a fascinating story about a world we've long forgotten. And look, these laws aren't just oddities you pull out at a party. Seriously, you should think of each one like a little time capsule. It's packed with the worries, the values, and sometimes the kind of comical problems of a world that was just so different from ours. Okay, so let's crack open a few case files on these bizarre bans. We're going to take a look at some of the absolute strangest ones and try to figure out what in the world the lawmakers were thinking when they came up with them. So get this, in Alabama, there was a law making it illegal to carry an ice cream cone in your back pocket. And not just any day, specifically on a Sunday. I mean, the details are just wild. It sounds totally and completely random, but believe it or not, there's a reason for it. So why, right? What kind of threat did a pocket full of melting mint chocolate chip pose to the public? And I promise you, the answer has absolutely nothing to do with laundry stains. And here's the kicker. It was all about preventing horse theft. Back in the 1800s, stealing a horse was a huge deal, a major felony. Thieves figured out they could put a treat, like ice cream, in their back pocket to quietly lure a horse away from its owner. So the law wasn't about the ice cream at all. It was a super clever, if a little weird, way to stop a serious crime. All right, so we've gone from horse thieves to, well, to this. In some states, it's literally illegal to drive around with an uncaged bear in your car. Now, I know it sounds like something straight out of a cartoon, but this wasn't just some random joke. There was a real practical concern behind it. So, what was the thinking here? To really get it, you have to picture a time and a place where apparently enough people thought driving with a loose bear was a good idea that the government had to step in and officially say, hey, maybe don't do that. And honestly, the reasons usually boil down to these three things. First, just basic public safety. I mean, maybe don't let a bear ride shotgun. Second, it was about maintaining some kind of public order, which was a huge deal for towns that were just starting out. And finally, sometimes you just had to address some really odd local customs before they got too out of hand. These laws were really all about trying to bring a little order to a much wilder world. Okay, our last case file here might just be the most baffling of all. In Quitman, Georgia, it is illegal to walk backwards after the sun goes down. Think about that. It takes a perfectly normal thing to do and makes it illegal, but only under a very specific condition. This one just feels like it defies all logic. I mean, it's not stopping a thief. It's not containing a wild animal. What possible danger could walking backwards in the dark actually pose that would need its very own law? And the answer is actually really simple. It was about safety. Back in the 1800s, there were no electric streetlights. Walking around after dark was genuinely risky business. So this law, as strange as it sounds, was just a straightforward, maybe a little overprotective attempt to stop people from tripping over uneven cobblestones or falling into a ditch they couldn't see. So, we've got laws to stop horse thieves with ice cream, keep bears out of the front seat, and prevent people from tripping in the dark. Now that we've seen a few examples of the what, let's kind of zoom out and try to understand the why. Why were these ridiculous-sounding laws even a thing? Because here's the thing. As weird as they all seem, they're not actually random. Once you look at a bunch of them, you start to see patterns. They tend to fall into just a few distinct categories that really tell us a lot about the priorities of the time. It pretty much all boils down to a few key reasons. You've got that creative crime prevention, like the whole ice cream trick. Then you have laws that were all about enforcing moral or religious values. Think of the old blue laws that banned certain activities on Sundays. Then there are just the straightforward public safety concerns, like not walking backwards at night. They were all basically just experiments in trying to create a stable, orderly society. So, what's the big takeaway here? I mean, these laws are almost never enforced today, so why do they even still matter? Well, it turns out they're more than just funny relics. They have a real legacy. At the end of the day, these laws are like little historical artifacts. Even if they're just gathering dust in a law book, they're still a living link to the anxieties and the quirks of the past. They're a great reminder that history isn't just about big battles and famous speeches, it's also about the strange, small rules that shaped everyday life. And really, it just proves that old saying is true. The truth of history is often way stranger than any story we could make up. I mean, the real past, with its bears and cars and its ice cream wielding horse thieves, it's just more bizarre and interesting than anything you could invent. So the next time you hear about a weird law, don't just laugh it off. Ask yourself, what forgotten story is hiding behind that rule?